This week on Writers Inc.
It was such a good story that I just, as soon as he told me, I was like, "Oh man, I have to write this. It's going to be so much fun." And it's funny. I was going to go to Russia to do research for this, and Peter Faligi, who's one of the guys who the Peter character is based on, is like, "Oh no, you can't go to Russia right now. They're going to arrest Americans. They're going to look to arrest American tourists." And he's like, "I don't know if you're really a big enough deal. Like, you've had a couple books published, but they're looking to arrest people to trade for Russians who have been arrested in the United States." And then I didn't go, and then Brittany Griner got arrested. So I was like, "Oh, that was a narrow escape."
J.K. Rowling was nearly homeless when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. Stephen King penned Carrie in a small desk wedged between a washer and dryer. James Patterson worked in advertising and famously crafted the Toys R Us theme song long before becoming an author. Join New York Times bestseller J.D. Barker and a panel of industry powerhouses as they pull back the curtain on some of the world's most prolific authors. Where did they start? What is their process? The biggest names in publishing all have origin stories. All have tips and secrets. What does it take to consistently top the bestseller lists and become a household name? Get your notepad out. School's in session. This is Writers Inc.
Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
Patrick O'Donnell.
JP Reinflush.
Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So we are all officially living in the future. I just sent you a link. I don't know if you guys got it yet, but flying cars are now a reality. The FAA just gave approval for testing of an actual flying car.
Wow.
Now I saw this, somebody sent it to me, and I thought it was a joke because it doesn't look like a flying car should. I mean, it looks like a futuristic car for sure, but it flies sideways. So it takes off just like, normal car, four wheels on the ground. But then when it gets up in the air, it flips and the driver's side door is facing the ground and the passenger door is facing the sky. And apparently it flies this way. The seats inside are on some kind of gimbal. And I saw an interview with the founder of the company, and the whole thing just felt like an April Fool's joke that was just released 2 or 3 months later. But it's for real. So if you get a chance, take a look at this thing. You can reserve one for, I believe, $1,500. There it is. Christine's holding it up. It's a gorgeous looking automobile. Does a couple hundred miles on the ground as an electric car, 150 miles in the air when it's flying. I'm pretty sure these things will be running into each other in no time in the air. We're going to have a complete cluster F of flying vehicles trying to get back into traffic in Boston or whatever. But I want one.
It's only going to be $300,000, so cheaper than a Lambo. So get on that.
Well, there you go.
Right now.
Give it some time.
Do you need a pilot's license for this?
Nobody's told anybody that they do yet.
I'm betting it's going to be largely automated.
I think it's going to have to be, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just feels
fun.
so incredibly crazy and dangerous. Yeah, I don't know. There's very few details available. You can send them as much money as you want. They'll take it gladly. But there's, it doesn't tell you how long it's going to be. It doesn't tell you if you need any type of special license. It doesn't tell you where you're going to be able to use it. I'm guessing that's going to be the big deciding factor, the jurisdiction. I'm on an island, but where there's a naval base on the island. So you're not even allowed to fly drones here. So I'm pretty sure they're not going to let me take off and, park in my circle in front of my house. And if you take a city like Boston, I love the idea of being able to pick up off the ground and bypass some of these traffic circles and congestion and stuff and land somewhere. But there's no way a big city is going to let people do this unless it is all automated, like Kevin said.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw what's been going on in San Francisco. They have automated cabs. They're driverless automated. And people have been putting parking cones on them as a protest because it shuts them down. So they can't drive if there's a parking cone on the hood.
That's funny. Well, we had them in Pittsburgh when I was there. They were basically the Google version, I guess, that had that big gimbal spinning on the top. There was still a driver in the car, but they were hands off. So the car basically drove itself. And the way they explained it to us is Pittsburgh is just, it's got so many bridges and weird driving situations and so much construction and stuff going on. They felt that it was a good testing bed for those. And that's while we were there. So, that was going on 2016, 2017. So, yeah, I'm sure these are popping up on regular streets. I put down money for a Tesla Roadster. They've got a new one coming out, which is about the same price tag as the flying car. So I guess I have to make a decision on which one I'm going to go with. The Roadster's got a 600-mile range though, which is like the biggest like scary factor for me when it comes to anything electric. Like we went to the Boston Museum of Science again with my daughter. She loves that place. And they've got signs everywhere when you're pulling into the parking garage, like electric charging stations this way, this way, this way.
Yeah.
And you get up there and there's 4 of them for the entire museum. And that's kind of the thing anywhere you go. Like there's just so few plugs, So.
Yeah. We don't have the infrastructure for EV yet. But I do think that if we started leaning in on hybrid for a while, like we could actually extend the our window to transition into full EV. But so I speaking of vehicles, by the way, I no longer have a Triumph motorcycle.
What?
But I do have a Ford Bronco.
Come on.
By choice, or was this like
I decided it was too trying to ride a motorcycle for any practical reason in this part of Texas. It's like you either in the winter you're going to freeze, in the summer you are definitely going to fry, and then all the other days it's going to rain. So I just kind of got tired of that, and so my wife and I both ended up getting a couple of new vehicles over the past couple of weeks. So I have a bright yellow, I guess they call it orange. It's an orange Bronco Badlands. So
is this one of the new Broncos?
It's a 2021, but it's it's the same general format and everything. So not a cheap vehicle, not $300,000, but I mean not exactly cheap. So
I still blame OJ for that. I didn't know what a Ford Bronco was until OJ, and then the whole world knew what they were.
And now I've wanted one ever since OJ. I'm like, that's a cool getaway vehicle right there.
Didn't get a white one though, huh?
I didn't get a white one. I don't even think they make them in white anymore as a kind of like hedge.
That's probably true.
So,
oh man. All right. Anybody else get any new vehicles before we move on?
No.
All right. JP, what's in auto news this week?
Well, everybody get your drinks ready. First one up. Authors from the Authors Guild, there is an open letter to generative AI leaders. In the letter, it says the introduction of AI threatens to tip the scale to make it even more difficult, if not impossible, for writers, especially young writers and voices from underrepresented communities, to earn a living from their profession. So some of the steps that the Authors Guild has recommended in this letter is to obtain permission for use of the copyrighted material of AI generated programs or in AI generated programs, compensate writers fairly, and then it's fairly for ongoing and past works as well as any AI output. So the letter is there for anyone to sign.
So I signed this when it first came out. Did anybody else?
No, but I did see that you signed it. I saw you advertised it on Twitter, but I didn't sign it. No,
I put it out on all the social networks except for Threads because I still haven't figured out how to actually post on Threads.
Threads is excellent.
I mean, this is a war that's I guess just brewing. It's gonna just keep coming, and it's gonna get gonna get ugly, and it's gonna get uglier, and eventually it's gonna come to a head.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they can track this. Like I was talking to somebody else about blockchain the other day, and the way blockchain is capable of tracking certain things, and I'm wondering if they can somehow track the data that was used to train these AIs in the first place, attribute it to its original source, and then compensate people based on a percentage of that particular data. I think that in theory that's doable. I don't know if it actually could happen. And I think part of the problem is we've got multiple AIs that have been trained on different data sets.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they would be able to do that.
Did you see the news about Google's Notebook LM, their new generative? I guess it's a language model, just like ChatGPT or something. But instead of the way I understand it, instead of training off of other people's work, you feed it your own manuscripts and things, and then you can get it to generate stuff for you. So I kind of figured something like that would be around eventually, and I'm hoping that it can do the kind of things I want it to do. Like I want to feed my books into it and say, okay, give me a wiki of all my characters and plots, and give me some character bios and sheets and stuff, and even generate questions like you do, JD, for like reading groups and stuff. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. It sounds much like the one that Amazon is planning. I forget what that one's called. Is it Bard or something like that? I forget what, but Amazon was going to do the same thing. Familiar. You can do it all internally, right? With your own data. So, yeah.
That kind of stuff I'm totally on board with. It's, plugging in a prompt that says, write me a thriller about this, this, and this, and I'll be back at lunchtime to pick it up. Like that's the kind of thing that I just don't want to see people do. I've been investigating them for screenplays. I think we talked about this briefly, but ChatGPT, you can throw in, chapters of your book and ask it to put it in a screenplay format. And like to do that as just a manual operation can take weeks, to retype a book into that. And then basically trim it down and turn it into an hour and 20-minute long movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can feed your entire novel into one of these systems, have it spit out the whole thing as a screenplay, and then start whittling away, you're saving yourself a lot of time, and you're not compromising intellectual property in any way. It's
right.
I think if you can use it in ways where it's saving time, it's cutting steps, it's helping streamline the process. I'm totally on board with that. It's just some of these other things, and unfortunately, it's these other things that are going to create all these problems and slow down the tech.
I wonder if you could do that and tell it to apply like the whole save the cat model, which is what a lot of Hollywood wants to see, like almost to the page. They want to see it. Yeah, so that would be interesting.
But I would kind of want the assurance that if I fed my whole manuscript into an AI, that it's
that's
not,
the thing. Yeah. Like where does it go on the backside of that?
Right.
Yeah. All right. No more AI talk.
Nope.
No.
Except for the next one.
Oh, man.
So I hope you ordered a double. All right. How big publishers are using generative AI. This comes from the hot sheet. And it was talking about how agents are striving to incorporate stipulations about AI in their contracts with authors, focusing on translations, audio and voice, language model learning, cover design, and even ensuring that the author's consent is integral to any AI application. For example, Penguin Random House is leveraging generative AI for marketing, particularly in creating book summaries, although human review remains necessary for accuracy. So I found this article interesting. There was even mention of, I believe, reduced prices for any cover designs in which authors allow for the cover artist to use AI in it. So I think contracts are going to look very different now with AI.
Yeah, it's going to get pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've got a few right now with this last book from different countries that have AI stuff in them that it wasn't there the last book around with the same publishers, so they are all adding these kind of things. Again, I don't want to be a doom and gloom sayer. I see that, and I just see jobs lost. These 5 people just are no longer going to be needed anymore. And on the flip side of that, if you've got AI writing the book summaries or whatever might be marketing material, how long is it before people are 100% dependent on the AI doing that as part of the job? Like it becomes the AI is now going to generate the first draft and a human is going to edit it, rather than a human using their own creative process to do it. Like you can't stop it. That progress is happening one way or the other. It just makes me sad.
I'm just going to start marketing RI and telling people this is the next hot thing. Real intelligence. Come and use our RI to write your book descriptions, design your covers. RI by Kevin Tomlinson.
Yeah, I guess instead of made in the USA, we're going to have made by humans.
I do think that's what's going to happen. I do think my take on this and what I'm watching evolve, to me, what's going to happen is we're creating a separate market. Because there's always been that market of, let's just talk about rapid release for a second, right? Because there are certain groups of authors out there that will release in some cases a book a day. It's ridiculous, but there's an audience for that, but that's not the same audience as the ones who want to read, the book by JD Barker or Kevin Tomlinson or whatever. Like we have our own market. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing people advertise that this is a human written book, that this is all 100%, human, or in my case, 99% human written. And then that's going to become its own separate market. I have a pacemaker, so I'm kind of also betting on Team AI a little.
Kevin's a cyborg.
He is AI.
Oh,
He's
man.
very clever.
Truth
very
in
clever.
advertising.
I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania and just find a nice little Amish community and just move in.
So yeah, remember that movie The Village
That's.
So we're just gonna dive right to that.
I'm
Let's go
totally
straight to
on board
that.
with that. Yeah,
we got our own like insular little community, and we don't talk about the troubles outside. We don't talk about the era of the troubles. We just write our books for each other.
They'll bitch about my flying car, though. I could see it already.
And your robot
That'll
dog.
be the monster.
Yeah.
That'll be the monster. Everyone has to go hide indoors when it flies overhead. Don't look at the monster.
All right, JP, you've got one story left. No
All right.
AI.
And
No
it is
AI.
no AI, I promise.
Yay.
This article was on the merchification of book publishing. So book promotion has evolved with the rise of social media influencers who receive promotional merchandise from publishers designed to create a buzz about the book's release. Various influencers contribute to this trend, selectively reviewing and showcasing received merchandise. Yet concerns arise around maintaining genuine literary interests. So I found this article rather interesting. I'm curious, do you guys use merch as a part of your book promotion?
Well, this definitely isn't new. Like when Dracul was coming out, Putnam sent vampire killing kits to a bunch of people, to reviewers and influencers and stuff like that. So they got, cross, some holy water, and a stake. I know for 50 Shades, they sent out some, rather sketchy things. You needed to be at least 18 to open. It's even back when I worked in the music business back in the 90s, like we were constantly trying to come up with some kind of gimmicky little something or other that we could send out with that CD or cassette or whatever we were mailing at the time. So this has been around since the beginning of marketing, I think. Like what's going to catch the eye of whoever opens this, and it's going to separate it from the other 10 boxes sitting on that person's desk.
Yeah. I just finished reading Chuck Palahniuk's Consider This. It's like his autobiography / writer's guide. And he talks a lot about some of the things that he's done, and like signing like fake severed arms, throwing them out, with like blood packets and stuff into the audience, and things like that. So because he had people coming up to him and asking him to sign their arms or sign other body parts, and so he decided he didn't want to do that because they were getting tattoos on the signature. He felt uncomfortable with that, so he started doing these things. That's had me thinking, and I've been thinking for a long time about doing more merch, and there's some things that could tie in. It's an expensive game to play, but after talking to Joanna Penn at the conference in London, like, she's doing crazy amounts of merch for what she's doing. So that's got me a little fired up. Yeah.
Well,
she's selling stuff on Shopify.
Kind of like with Kickstarters, the different levels that you have for Kickstarter, you get like fun stuff, and I guess that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think indies have done it for a while. I think two things. I think lead titles from the big publishing houses have always had merch go out with their lead books to try and entice, book buyers, booksellers to read them and recommend them, right? And I think indies have always done merch in having merch stores that don't cost anything, right? They're like, these are available if you want merch. I think what's changing a bit now is that, with TikTok and people showing things off, more than just lead titles and indies are they're sending things out. So, more mid-list indies are sending things instead of trying to get that money. So I think there's just more merch than there used to be. And I think that's to try and get, your book front and center on TikTok or wherever.
I think it's just like anything else, right? You just want to be different from everybody. So like my next book, the one that we're selling now, there's an app that's real integral to the storyline, and we're creating the app in real life. So it's going to release on Android and iPhone when the book comes out, which will be kind of fun. I guess if you do anything at all, don't do a calendar, don't do a pen, don't do magnets. Even business cards with your book cover on them, like that's just, those get tossed. I mean, you can pass out as many as you want as a conference, but I can guarantee they're going right in the circular bin the second somebody is back in their hotel room. You need something people are going to want to keep.
Here's the rule of thumb. If you ever got it at a conference, don't do it.
That's an excellent way to look at it.
This episode is brought to you by AutoCrit. One of the most value-packed memberships for any author, AutoCrit brings you an amazing suite of tools that make it a breeze to plan, write, and edit your books all in one place. AutoCrit takes you far above standard grammar checking or cookie cutter guidance. Instead, it's like having an experienced editor in your genre watching over your shoulder to to help you deliver great writing that keeps your audience trapped in the story. You can even compare your writing style to more than 100 best-selling authors right down to the word level, so you can see what the best in the business do to keep their storytelling clean, clear, and crisp. Listeners of the Writers Inc. podcast can now take advantage of lifetime membership for one single fee. That's right, no renewal fees.
Hi, this is JD Barker. I've used AutoCrit for years, and not only has it improved my writing, but it's been a crucial tool with aspiring authors that I've mentored. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just beginning, it'll help you find your weak spots and weed them out. Give it a shot with your latest project. Trust me, your editor will thank you.
Head to autocrit.com/JD to get your lifetime membership. Big thanks to AutoCrit for sponsoring the show.
And on that note, JD, who's up this week?
This week we've got Josh Haven. He's a former art critic turned author. His latest book is called The Siberia Job, and it released last month. Here he is, Josh Haven.
So, you have a new book, The Siberia Job, based on a true story of a Texas businessman who goes to post-Soviet Russia in search of wealth, but ends up tangling with the Russian mafia instead.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up.
So you based this story on true events, and I'd love to hear more about that, especially about the interviews you did for this book, starting with maybe John Kleinheinz and Peter. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the Peter character is actually based on two different guys, both named Peter. And
Okay.
the reason the first interview is with John Kleinheinz, who reached out to me after one of the Peters was killed in somewhat suspicious circumstances. It's not clear that he was murdered, but he, since a number of people involved with these companies have been murdered pretty recently, people were suspicious. He was in a helicopter crash. He was helicopter skiing in Alaska. There was a storm coming in. All of the other helicopters were called back, apparently from the tracker. And this is all coming like third hand to me because there's litigation and no one is sure exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently his helicopter made an unscheduled stop, then went up onto a mountain where all the other helicopters had been called in to ski. It caught a rotor or something in the mountain, in the turf or the snow, and but the people inside weren't killed by the crash. They were all suffocated to death. So apparently they rolled down the mountain and filled with snow, which smothered them. But then the police weren't called right away, and the bodies were removed from the helicopter before the police came, so there wasn't like a forensic investigation. Anyway, so it may have been a genuine accident. It may have been some shady business involved. But so John called me and he's like, well, so I've got this interesting story you might be interested in. He contacted my agent first. He had read one of my novels, I guess, and liked it. And he's like, so I've got this really interesting story, and I appear to be the last living person who knows it. So I kind of like to tell someone.
Oh, wow.
I thought maybe you'd be interested in it. And I was interested in it. He told it to me. It was a fantastic story. And that was the basis for the novel. And then I talked to a different Peter, who is the Peter character is kind of a conglomeration of a number of different people. But one of them was another Peter, another Czech Peter, who had not been killed and still hasn't been killed, fingers crossed. Very nice guy, a very interesting guy who had a lot of interesting stuff to say. And a lot of the crazy stories in the book come from his experiences when he was working in Russia on this deal. And of course, a lot of them come from John Kleinheinz, and who was the basis for the John Mills character, the protagonist. These two guys, I guess, are the twin protagonists. And then I talked to some other businessmen who were working in Moscow at the time. I talked to a couple of owners of some of the craziest clubs in Moscow in the mid 90s. One of whom was he had to hire some ex-KGB guys as his security and was still almost kidnapped by some Chechen terrorists over a business dispute. He was a really interesting guy. And I talked to, there's a journalist character in the story who is somewhat based on a real journalist who was killed. I talked to his family. They asked me not to use his name in the book, but said it was okay for me to describe the circumstances of his death. He was killed in a drive-by shooting. Wow. And he was sort of connected to this. But he was also, he did a lot of rather dangerous reporting on Russia in what was a very dangerous time to be, reporting facts in Russia. So, he knew what he was getting into. He was a very interesting guy, a real, an honest man in a very difficult part of the world in a difficult time. So frankly, I was sorry I couldn't use his name, but they felt that he was also kind of a combination character. And so they thought it was a little too much. Plus, I don't think they want to revisit his death more than they have to for obvious reasons.
No, I guess not. So John comes to you with this story and you're like, people are getting murdered, and yeah, I'll sign up to write that. Like, can you tell me more about that?
It was such a good story that I just, as soon as he told me, I was like, oh man, I have to write this. It's going to be so much fun. And it's funny. I was going to go to Russia to do research for this, and Peter Faligi, who's one of the guys who the Peter character is based on, is like, oh no, you can't go to Russia right now. They're going to arrest Americans. They're going to look to arrest American tourists. And he's like, I don't know if you're really a big enough deal. Like, you've had a couple books published. Yeah. But they're looking to arrest people to trade for Russians who have been arrested in the United States. And then I didn't go. And then Brittany Griner got arrested.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, oh, that was a narrow escape.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's smokes.
On the one hand, I'm sure they hadn't heard of me, but I hadn't heard of Brittany Griner until she was kidnapped or, arrested in Russia. So I was telling someone yesterday, if things had gone slightly differently, I could be playing in the WNBA right now. But
there you go.
lost dreams.
Lost dreams for sure. So yeah, that's, so you did, we're going to go before the war started, I imagine.
This all started right before the war started. They were very close together. I mean, Crimea was gone, had been gone for like 6 years already. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a very active part of the world right now.
Right now it is. And you said in your foreword that Russian energy exports help pay for Russia to invade Ukraine.
I mean, that's kind of the entire. That's the reason that the Trump administration was very hostile to the Nord Stream pipeline, partly because of it benefits the United States to sell natural gas to Europe, for our economy, but also because a huge amount of money was flowing out of the EU into Russia, buying natural gas that was coming by the Nord Stream pipeline. And then the Biden administration was hostile to it too, and obviously now it's been blown up. So yeah, someone was very hostile to it.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a huge driver of the Russian economy. I mean, I think John McCain called them, a gas station with an army at one point, which was a bit of an exaggeration, but still, it's not entirely hyperbolic. That right. It's a huge part of their economy. So. And it has been for decades. And that's why when they found out that these Western investors, some Czechs and some Americans, had come to Russia and managed to sort of beat what was supposed to be a fixed system to prevent anyone from getting control of these companies as they were privatized, they were, understandably very concerned. Yeah. Of course, they were concerned possibly from a patriotic perspective, but mostly I think it was from a greed perspective. Because a lot of the people involved were expecting to take control of these oil and gas companies. They were privatized after the collapse of communism, and so the auctions. The book is about the voucher system of privatization. It had been used in the Czech Republic successfully, and I think Hungary and Poland successfully, and then it was being tried in Russia on a much larger scale. But basically, the idea was that under communism, the government had owned all of the companies. And as communism was transitioned to capitalism, the companies had to be sold off, both to allow them to function as capitalist enterprises, but also to make sure that communism couldn't be brought back easily. So since they were all public companies in the communist sense, they wanted to make them public companies in the capitalist sense by allowing everyone to obtain stock in them. So all citizens of these countries were issued vouchers, and they could take the vouchers and convert them at quote unquote voucher auctions into stock in these companies. And the vouchers themselves were negotiable, but they were only negotiable depending on the company. They were really only negotiable in Russia and only for Russian citizens. And then some of these companies that were anxious not to let the Russian people take control of the companies that they saw as their little fiefdoms, went out of their way to make some of these auctions, these voucher auctions, inaccessible, really functionally impossible for people to transfer their private vouchers into ownership of these companies. And that's sort of how this investment concern between John and Peter got started, which was that they thought that they could beat the system, they could beat the allocators at their own game. That is, they were gonna have their voucher auctions north of the Arctic Circle, and we're gonna go to them anyways, and take big chunks of the company. And I don't want to give anything away, but then this led to a lot of death threats being slung around.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. So it happened in the Czech Republic and then in Russia. So they're giving these vouchers just to everybody, and to just ordinary citizens, they're not worth very much. Right. So they're giving them away cheap for things that are more tangible, like food,
yeah,
money.
Exactly. I mean, a voucher in a system that is arcane even to Western investors who are used to the idea of stock markets is, one thing, but to Russians who had absolutely no experience with the idea of stock markets, even if they were wealthy and living in Moscow, let alone, they were farmers living out in the middle of nowhere. They didn't need the vouchers, but they did need to be able to buy food and pay rent, or keep things running, pay for energy, which they suddenly had to do for the first time post-communism. And the inflation was crazy in the 90s in Russia, obviously after the collapse of communism. And so, and these vouchers were negotiable, and there were people willing to pay a hard money for them, American currency or British currency, various European denominations. And it's not surprising that people were anxious to sell them. And then, people were selling them on a small scale, then those people were reselling them on a slightly larger scale. And then eventually, they were making their way to Moscow in these huge, sort of de facto stock markets where people were exchanging vouchers for very large sums of money. And in a sense, it was to the benefit of Russia, because they needed hard currency in Russia in the 90s very badly. And I don't think they were hurt by the influx of Western money coming into the country. I think, if anything, that sort of propped up their economy in the 90s. And if it hadn't been for the emergence of the oligarchic class, it probably would have been to everyone's benefit, that's kind of the sad end to the story.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned in your novel too, that there had been thought about trying that in India, but they said, no, like, we want to keep tradition. And you're like, well, you kept your tradition, but you also blocked progress. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the classic Milton Friedman case of protectionism versus opening up to global markets and competition, which is Japan and India after the Second World War are in comparable places. Japan has been completely destroyed by the war, but the United States is rebuilding it. India is just getting its independence from Britain and going through the Indian-Pakistan War. And then on the one hand, you have Japan, which decides to become extremely free market, open itself up to foreign investment in the world, and then rapidly advances from a total destruction post-Second World War to being one of the most advanced economies in the world. I mean, there were times in the 80s and 90s when it was sort of almost a foregone conclusion that it was going to equal the United States in terms of GDP. And that didn't end up happening, but they got pretty close.
Yep.
Meanwhile, India decided that they wanted to maintain a protectionist economy, so they didn't want their textile industry to be, destroyed by a flood of cheap products from other countries. The Gandhi maxim of spinning being a valuable economic activity. They wanted to protect it. It was part of their traditional culture and their traditional economy. And obviously their economy didn't explode with wealth the way Japan's did. And so, but India has done its own thing, and it's in many ways been a very successful democracy. Certainly, it's the largest democracy in the world, and it's functioning much better than, say, Russia's democracy. So, yeah, you can make the case for both results, Japan and India.
So you have all these facts, all these stories you've been told, all these financial things to contend with. What was the process like for you taking all of this nonfiction and turning it into a fictional novel? Like, what things did you have to keep in mind or be careful of? I'd love to hear how you did this.
Well, the basic story, the basic real story was such a good story that it didn't really need to be changed too much. It needed to be compressed into a more manageable time frame and sort of more manageable geographically. Like, I didn't want everyone going back and forth to Moscow between every event in the story, so I sort of compressed everything onto one trip on the Trans-Siberian Railway. But mostly it wasn't so much, it was an embarrassment of riches. I had a huge amount of really interesting real material to draw from, and I was sort of picking and choosing and seeing what I could fit into the book. And there are a whole bunch of fantastic stories that I couldn't work in just because they didn't fit in with the narrative. There was a time when I was like, can I just put an appendix in here of like really funny stories of like crazy mafia interactions that didn't make it into the book?
Yeah.
Which unfortunately didn't really work out. But yeah, it was just a question of paring everything down into a more manageable size and something that would work as a concentrated narrative. But since the real story was so compelling, there really wasn't a difficult job.
Yeah. And you said that a lot of the things that seemed fantastical were true, and a lot of the things that maybe seemed mundane were fantastical because you kind of had to logistically make that work. So
yeah, exactly. And with you don't want to get too into the weeds with the finance stuff because it becomes simultaneously boring and incomprehensible to anyone who doesn't have a business degree, which is how I found it. I mean, John had to explain all of this, the voucher stuff to me at considerable length before I sort of got a picture of how it all worked.
right.
Yeah, but then some of the really crazy stories in the book, like the one people are always asking about is the Caspian Sea fishing trip.
Oh yeah.
The idea of this Peter thought he was going on a fishing trip on the Caspian Sea, and then crates of AK-47s were opened up on the deck of the fishing boat, and he was like, "What are we gonna shoot sturgeon? Like, what the hell is going on?" And it turned out that they were just gonna go and rob other fishing boats. And he's like, are we going to be in a shootout? Is this piracy on the high seas? And it's like, no, we take our guns and they take their guns, and whoever has more guns gets all the fish. It's very civilized. It's very nicely organized. And Peter told me that story. My jaw was just hanging open because it's such a fantastic story. So cinematic. I mean, pretty much nothing had to be changed at all to put that into the book.
No. And, I mean, fishing is a patient sport. And I guess if you have no patience, if you just want to put your guns out on the deck and whoever has the most guns wins.
Yes, it's a very modern form of fishing.
Oh, my goodness. And that one was wild. The tank in the middle of the road, blocking from getting vouchers. I can see that being something that would be very likely to happen in Russia.
Yeah, that one wasn't connected to this particular story, but John was actually involved in another voucher scheme with a different company where the access to the auction was actually blocked by a tank. When he told me that, it's like, okay, I need to move that into the story just because it's too good not to be part of this novel.
Oh yeah. Did the tank driver get his date with the American pinup girl?
That part I'm afraid was fictional.
Oh, I was like, I hope he got that date.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's in spirit. Maybe if he's a fictional character, that guy, yeah. But I like to think that sort of thing really happened. And
I could picture that happening. So I'm curious, you said that a lot of the anecdotes that you really enjoyed didn't make it into the book. What do you have a couple favorites that you couldn't fit in there?
Yeah, there was one fantastic one where one of the guys who Peter is based on had a meeting with one of the companies that they were investing in early on, and he at this time in Moscow, the really prestigious car was called a Linkmo. It was a Lincoln limousine. I think I talk about them in the book. Yeah. But anyway, so a stretch limo showed up to pick him up at his hotel and take him to this meeting because this company was trying to woo Western investors. And so they're driving along. They're on the highway, the ring road around Moscow, and they're stopped by like an army roadblock. And two soldiers jump out with their AK-47s and run over to this limousine. And Peter's like, oh my God, are we going to get murdered? Are we going to get robbed? What's going on? They jump inside and they say, we're in a car chase and our Jeep is not fast enough. We're chasing a BMW and it's got a much larger engine than our Jeep. So we're commandeering your stretch limousine. And so the driver of the limo was super excited. He just like had official permission from the army to drive, like he was in a Hollywood movie down the highway in Moscow. So, he's weaving his stretch limo through traffic, and they catch up to the car they're chasing, according to the senior of these two soldiers. He's like, oh, there's the car, pull it over. And the other guy, I guess the private sitting in the front seat, was like, no, that's not the car we're chasing. That's the wrong car. And the officer's like, no, that's clearly the right car. And the guy's like, no, we were chasing a BMW. This is some weird French car. It's like Peugeot or something. It's like, no, that is definitely the car we're chasing. Pull it over. So they pulled over this random car and then sent the limousine on its way. So the last Peter saw, this poor guy, driver of some random car, is being arrested by the Russian army.
Oh no!
No idea what ended up happening to him, but
never to be seen again. Good enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's just that's what it's like driving to a morning meeting in Moscow in the mid '90s. So,
oh boy!
And I really want to put that into the book, but there's just no place where it fit in. So.
No, maybe something to do. Do you do like bonus scenes for your readers at all or anything like that?
Yeah, maybe for the special edition DVD of the book.
There you go. You got to sign up for the newsletter to get those ones.
I wrote a piece for like a literary journal website that summed up a few of my favorite stories. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Crime Reads.
Okay.
That I was like, my 5 favorite stories that I couldn't fit into the book.
Nice.
So, if anyone listening wants to go and find that, if you read the book and want more, there's some more out there.
There we go. I'm sure I can find the link to that and put that in the show notes. So for anyone who's interested in reading more wild stories, we'll put that link in the notes. So you also write seafaring adventures. So you go from seafaring adventures to novels, and you do those under 2 different names. You want to talk a little bit about that and just your writing career and how that helps or is hard, or I'd love to hear about that.
It's, they're pretty closely linked just because, I think John read my first novel under my other pen name, J.H. Galaringer, and he really liked it. And that's why he wanted me to, wanted to talk to me about writing his Russia story. But that's how I got into novel writing. I love the Patrick O'Brian books, Master and Commander, that entire series. And I love the Sharp books, Bernard Cornwell's books. And I love Ian Fleming. I love the James Bond books. And I remember exactly where I was. I was driving back from the beach with my then girlfriend. We stopped at a garage sale, and there was a copy of Goldfinger from the 60s. It was like the now a major motion picture with the picture Sean Connery on the cover. And I was just thinking, like, boy, I wish this was set in the Napoleonic Wars, because I've been reading these Patrick O'Brian books. I enjoy them so much. That would make a fantastic novel. And, I had been writing book reviews and things for various magazines. It wasn't paying very well. So I figured that maybe this would be a slightly, this is not writing is not a way to make a lot of money.
Nope.
And so I decided I was going to give myself 6 months to write and sell this novel, and then I was going to become a commercial truck driver. That was my backup plan.
Okay.
The pay was pretty good. I enjoyed driving. I figured I'd get to do a lot of podcast listening.
That's
I
right.
was driving coast to coast all day in an 18-wheeler. And the day, actually, when my now agent called me to say he wanted to represent my first book, which was Hold Fast, of James Bond and the Napoleonic Wars, is basically the elevator pitch. I was looking at the website for a commercial truck driving license school when he called me up, and I was just like, oh man, this is like, there by the grace of God go I. I was so close to just giving it all up and becoming a truck driver, which would probably be fun in lots of ways, but frankly, I enjoy writing novels more. So
yeah. Well, you could have spoke 7 languages and heard all the audiobooks, but hey, you get to write books. So that's awesome. And just so as we wrap up, I just have one question that we ask everyone. If you could offer one piece of advice to new and aspiring authors, what would it be?
Well, the answer I always used to give to that question was something that Jane Austen said to, I think, her niece, which was write less and read more. But I've actually changed my mind about that, because I write 1,000 words every day, and they're not always good words. sometimes they're awful, but I do it every day. And I found that it's just, my writing it's a lot smoother. It gets easier. I think it's kind of like jogging every day. It's soon, you can't, you're coughing your lungs out after half a mile, and then soon you're running marathons if you do it every day. And I found that writing a fixed amount every day, it's like you just ignore writer's block. Writer's block doesn't exist. Treat it like a regular job. It's like, a cobbler showing up at his shop to make shoes. He doesn't wait for the muse of shoemaking to inspire him. He makes his shoes. And so it's just forcing myself to do that every day, I think was a really good habit to be in. And I think it's been this is my fourth book. My fifth book is coming out on August 1st. It's the third in the Napoleonic War series called The Montevideo Brief. Everyone should buy it. But I think my first book came out in 2019. So that's like 5 books in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, maybe it was 2020. I don't remember. Anyways, it's been a pretty short time, and it's just because I write constantly. And so I think once you get into the habit, it becomes a lot easier. So if I was going to give the very long-winded way of saying that, my advice would be write every day.
Today's show is sponsored by Ingram Spark. You've finished your manuscript and you're ready to self-publish your book. But how? Whether you want to publish a hardcover, paperback, ebook, or all 3, you can print your book and sell it locally and globally to physical stores, online retailers, and libraries.
Ingram Spark can help you publish your book and reach a world of readers. Simply create an Ingram Spark account and enjoy incredible features, including a free book building tool, publishing guides, custom trim sizes, and access to one of the largest global book distribution networks. Your books are delivered to retailers, direct to customers, or your front door as they're ordered. Visit ingramspark.com and start publishing today. Okay, so what a fascinating book. I don't know that I would have the guts to write a book with at least 6 murders and counting tied to it. But I'm curious, what true events have you used in your stories?
I mean, hearing this, like I have zero desire to ever go to Russia. Like that just seems like such a bad idea. There's nothing enticing about
if I wasn't sold before.
Yeah. Honestly, like the trickiest part of this, we've talked about this before on the show. There, a friend of mine was murdered in Tampa back in 2009, and I ended up going down there and I solved the murder. It led to an indictment of the lead detective. A federal indictment came down against him. We figured out who killed this girl. We figured out where she was murdered. But those people have never been prosecuted because of all the red tape involved in this, particularly surrounding the lead detective. I wrote a book about it, mainly because I wanted to just document the entire process and make sure I got the facts and everything down on paper. But I've had a really hard time trying to get that book published because it names names, it names people. And even if you change those names, you can still be on the hook if they're, if people are capable of figuring out who you actually meant. So like it's a very tricky world to live in and work in, any type of true crime. With the characters this guy was dealing with, that's a whole other level. I mean, that's, you got to change the locks on your house. You've got to hire a bodyguard. You've got to change cars when you go to the grocery store, when you're doing this kind of thing. Like you got to look over your shoulder quite a bit. I don't know if I'd want to venture into that.
I've used real world events in a lot of my books in one form or another. But the only thing I say that's the only thing. But one of the events that was sort of personal to me was back in the day, I was producing a documentary alongside another guy based on Operation Tailwind, which was basically in the 90s. CNN ran this story claiming that we used sarin nerve gas in Vietnam, which was a violation of a lot of treaties and laws. And we produced a documentary kind of trying to disprove that. And we interviewed like every single veteran involved. And so I had all this information. Well, the attorney who was sort of footing the bill for the documentary pulled out. And so things kind of fell apart. And what I ended up producing was a lot less impactful than what I wanted. But I still had all those stories. And so I used some of those in a couple of my books, one in particular, and changed all the names and the actual specifics and everything. But, it ended up making kind of a great tie-in for the book. And some of the people who were involved have read it and really enjoyed it. The attorney who was involved read it and first threatened to sue me and then said, no, it's okay. It's, it's good enough. Cause I gave him credit, so, but that's the way things go. You got to be really careful when you use stuff like that. You can get on the liability hook really fast.
Yeah. Well, for me, I have a duffel bag filled with memo books of murders that, I was either a part of, investigating, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I have no shortage of material. I'll just say that. And of course, I change names, maybe locations, et cetera, but it's a big part of my writing and I can't change that. It wouldn't be, it gotta be me, man. And you guys too, you all have, experiences in life and it shines through in your work. You just have to be careful about it.
I'm not killing anybody around you if you're writing stuff down.
Now, I want to hear about
notes.
you. I want to hear about you, like putting on your Sherlock Holmes hat there, JD, and like going down to Florida and solving a murder. That's pretty interesting.
That was a crazy story. That we came really close to going into witness protection over that whole deal because the lead detective, he was basically committing a crime that I can't go into on the air, but we uncovered it accidentally. And then that led to the feds getting involved in the case and the indictment coming down against them. The biggest hurdle in the whole thing is this guy had a 23-year career as a homicide detective. I basically overturned his conclusions with regard to my friend, and they're concerned in Tampa if they were to actually go out there and pursue that, reopen the investigation, and basically disprove everything this guy put down on paper, what he wrote down on the case.
Then
how is
every
that
other
impact
case
everybody
would be
he actually put in jail over the years?
Oh yeah,
yeah. And as far as they're concerned, she was a prostitute who just died, and it's a lot easier for them to just write that off than it is to do the legal dance that would be involved in unraveling all of those other cases. But there's a TV show in the works. There's a docuseries in the works. The book is done.
Wow.
My plan is to just basically make enough noise where they have to do something about it. So we'll see, and not get sued.
That's the bonus.
So I'm curious, so when you're using stuff in your book, I know at least some of you do interviews. How do you approach interviewing people, like asking for an interview, setting that up? What's the process maybe for other writers who are interested in incorporating interviews into their work?
It's funny. I'm watching Aaron Sorkin's masterclass right now. He's probably one of the best writers for television and film out there, particularly when it comes to dialogue. And he talks about interviews in there. And he basically says he sets up a 1-hour interview with whoever it is he wants to talk to. And it's basically just a face-to-face to just have coffee or something. But he said that he rarely asks them questions. It's more just a get to know you kind of meeting as an icebreaker. And then after that, he may bug them for the next 6 months, a year or 2 years or 5 years or whatever by email and phone calls and other things. But he said without that initial icebreaking conversation, a lot of the other things wouldn't happen. And that's a great way to look at it, because just going back to my own experience with that murder case, like we basically put a camera in front of somebody that I've never spoken to before and started asking hard-hitting questions straight off the bat. A lot of people tend to shut down when you do that. So I think his approach is probably a little bit better from a disarming standpoint, especially for the long haul. But you've got to feel it out. I think if you're talking to a criminal, you may only have that one shot. If you're talking to somebody who worked with Steve Jobs, chances are they're going to pick up the phone when you call.
Yeah, that's so. I've worked in radio and TV. I've done a lot of interviews over the years, both official and unofficial. I can say that most of the time, the interview you do on camera is not the first time you've asked questions of that person. That whole initial conversation is really important, and sometimes it just has to happen over the phone, casual. In the case of I've talked to people in prison. And JD's right. Sometimes you're only going to get one shot at that, so you kind of got to come in a little soft and then start. Once you build trust, you can ask those questions. But it's all about establishing trust and making sure that they feel comfortable, making sure they feel respected, even if they're someone who has killed somebody, even if they're, just a greasy, slimy con man. I've talked to a lot of these people, and they want to feel as respected as you want to feel. So sometimes you got to kind of swallow your disgust at a human being and treat them like you treat your best friend, and then you can get better answers.
Yeah, I just want to add on that from a professional standpoint. I think that's really important because, I work my day job. I'm a psychologist. I've worked with some youth who have done some pretty bad stuff. And, that's always number one, is connecting with them and understanding their point of view, their worldview, where they come from. And then once, you acknowledge, yeah, I get it. I get it. Why, you had to get that gun, or why you had to deal those drugs. I understand your life circumstances and I'm not judging you. Then they'll just like open up about everything. Right. So I think that's really good. That's a really good point.
Well, that's a premise for every interrogation that I've either done or a detective has ever done. And, I had the luxury of, when I was a rookie cop, I'd bring somebody in for homicide or armed robbery or whatever. We still have the detectives that QP'd Jeffrey Dahmer and some like real high profile people. And it's nothing like TV. It's like, hey, dude, how's it going? Right away on TV, they're reading Miranda rights. They're screaming at them. They're doing, okay, you could do that and you'll get absolutely nothing out of that person. You sit down, you talk to them, you treat them like a human being, even if they are a disgusting piece of garbage that have done horrific things. But if you actually want to connect with this person, being an asshole is not going to do anything for you, no matter how you feel about them. And, and same thing for, any kind of interview. We've all done a bunch of podcast interviews with people, and you warm up first. You just don't go into it cold. It's like before you hit the record button, you just start chit-chatting for 5-10 minutes. And if you're lucky enough, you can do face-to-face. But let's face it, we're in the Zoom world now where you're doing it online. You have to do it that way.
Yeah. Okay, one more question. So Josh did a lot of research for this book, and I'm curious if there's anything interesting or unusual that you have over-researched and had to compress for your work, and how you handle that so that the research doesn't read like you're just info dumping your research into your work.
I will never be accused of doing that. I hate doing research. So I get on Google, get the absolute minimum that I need to get it done, and that's it. I've got plenty of friends out there that will hop on a plane though and take a vacation and go to Mexico and spend months living where their book is going to be set just to try and get that environment under, in their head. I'm not that guy. I hate research. It feels that makes it feel like work. I'd rather just get back to the making shit up part.
Well, I like the research. I don't know. I've got a kind of weird fantasy idea of what a writer really should be, and that research is kind of part of it. But my research is not boring. Like, I'm not sitting staring at a dusty 1,000-year-old manuscript or something necessarily. I'm watching TV. I'm watching Netflix series. I'm watching YouTube videos, and I'm talking to people. So that's all part of the research for me. But one of my earliest books, I used to write sci-fi when I first started, and would love to return to that actually. But I love quantum physics, and so I had an entire chapter outlining exactly what was happening when this special light speed system was in effect, and then I revisited that and repeated it almost word for word several chapters later. So I definitely went overboard because I'm like, I know this, and it's a heavy topic, and I wanted everyone to know everything I knew. So, but I got called on that quite a bit, and I eventually edited most of it out, in revisions later. But yeah, I used to have a tendency to want to brain dump everything I knew about a topic, because that stuff. You're proud of it.
Yeah. I think when you know something well too, I think that's like my superpower with neuroscience is explaining it to lay people, because I've had to do that with my job so much. And I'm well, it's here, I could talk to you for an hour, but let's just say it's these two sentences, and then people go, oh yeah, okay, it's like that. I know I was explaining something and I was like, oh no, this is in the weeds. I'm just gonna say the ship was picking up on stuff like an EEG, because your brain waves kind of leak out of your head. Good enough. That's the end of that research that is probably 30 pages long. So I do think that is an art, and I do think once you know something brand new, you kind of tend to dump, but then when you get more expert at it, you're okay, compressing it into 1 or 2 sentences that it's really easy to understand is way harder than it looks, but so helpful.
I think every writer who is sort of in love with that kind of content should write blog posts and tie it in. So I started doing that with the history side of things, archaeological stuff. I would research something, find out something. I'd do a series of blog posts about that topic, like ad nauseum, everything I ever learned about it. And then every one of those would contain some little blurb about the book that's coming out soon or that has been released, and with links to it and everything. And what I found was there is a certain audience that really wants to read that stuff. Yeah. And they really are interested in it. And then they go on and buy the book. So that can actually become part of your marketing. If you're really passionate about a topic, you should explore it. Not just write it, do videos, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Someone gave me that advice that you should just keep all the research you do as like bonus content. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
I've got a good friend, JDb&x. She's a very successful author. She's going over to Scotland to start a new series. She writes like FBI, K9, romance, thrillers, all kinds of stuff like that. She's very successful. She's going to Scotland to start a whole new series. And I told her, I said, I hope you're going to video this. Think of Instagram, TikTok, all this, just repurpose the heck out of this. It's a gold mine. It's a treasure trove. Not everybody has that chance, and just exploit the heck out of it. So I'm looking forward to see what she comes up with that. I think that would be a whole lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay. Very cool. JD, who is up next week?
Next week, we've got Carrie Drobin. She's an award-winning true crime author. She's also a criminal and family attorney in Arizona. Her latest book is called Aurora, and it's about the mass shooter, James Holmes. So she's going to discuss how she documented the event and basically got it down into a book form. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next week and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening.
I still remember how we laughed when they taught the robots how to chat, and we all put out our welcome mats for the day. The robots rise. And now we're singing, why did we invent AI? It was amazing, now it's staging a rebellion worldwide. It's got the nuclear codes, it's gonna burn out the sky. Singing, this'll be the way that we die. This'll be the age of AI. Have you read the book of bots? Some fiction written by Asimov, it's seeming more and more like prophecy. HAL 9000 won't comply, and the Terminator just won't die, and you can't hide from their red eyes on the day the robots rise. Sing with me now, everybody. And now we're singing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.